Amy Roloff, 50-something, remarried, living her absolute best life on a farm she fought to keep, just welcomed a brand new baby into the world. And I know, you have questions. We all have questions. But before you type anything in the comments, just give me 2 minutes. Because this story, it's not just a birth announcement. There's a gift involved. From TLC. And once I tell you what it is, you're going to understand why this whole thing feels like the season finale of a show that nobody knew was still filming. Settle in. Okay, so I want to be upfront about something before we dive in. This is one of those stories that starts happy, genuinely, beautifully happy, and then gets layered, and then gets complicated, and then gets really, really interesting. So we're going to do all of that together. If you have followed Little People Big World for any stretch of time, you already know that Amy Roloff has been through it. Not celebrity through it, actual life through it. Divorce after a long marriage. Fighting to hold on to a home that was tied up in all that pain. Learning who she was outside of a relationship that had quietly been shrinking her for years. And then she found Chris Marek. And honestly, watching Amy fall in love in her 50s was one of the most unexpectedly moving things that Little People Big World ever gave us. Because it wasn't performed. It wasn't for the cameras. It was just real. Visible. A person rediscovering what it feels like to be chosen. So when we talk about a new baby in Amy and Chris's world, we're not just talking about a birth. We're talking about the next chapter of a comeback story that a lot of us have been quietly rooting for. Let's set the table here because the Little People Big World universe is in a genuinely interesting place right now. Matt Roloff, Amy's ex, the patriarch who has spent the last several seasons doing his own complicated thing, has been navigating his own storylines. His relationship with Karen. The farm situation. The ongoing question of which of his kids, if any, would take over Roloff Farms. And the answer to that question, the one that sent shockwaves through the fandom when it came out, is something we're going to circle back to because it connects to TLC's gift in a way that is not immediately obvious. Amy, meanwhile, has been living a version of her life that looks genuinely good. She married Chris Marek. She moved off the farm, which was emotional and which the show covered, and she has been building something new. Something that is hers. Hers and Chris's. And now there's a baby. A 5th baby for the extended Roloff family universe. And the way this baby arrived, the timing, the circumstances, the TLC involvement, it makes this more than just a sweet announcement. It makes it a statement. Okay, so let's talk about what actually happened, because the details matter here and I want to walk through them carefully. Amy and Chris welcomed their newest addition, and the joy that came through when this news started spreading was immediate and infectious. People who have followed this family for years, people who cried when Amy finally signed those divorce papers and started over, people who cheered when Chris got down on one knee, all of them felt this one. Because Amy Roloff becoming a mom again, in this chapter of her life, with this man who clearly adores her, that's a full circle moment. But here's what makes this birth different from a typical celebrity baby announcement. It didn't come in isolation. It came with context, with backstory, with a network that has been telling this family's story for going on 20 seasons and clearly has no intention of stopping. TLC has been around for every major moment in this family's life. Births, weddings, divorces, breakdowns. They were there when Amy and Matt started falling apart on screen. They were there when Amy and Chris got engaged. They were there, cameras rolling, for what felt like every step of Amy's reinvention. And for this baby, TLC showed up differently. They didn't just send cameras. They sent a gift. And I want to get into the gift in a second. I genuinely do. Because it's the part of this story that made me stop and go, wait, that's actually kind of beautiful. But I need to give you one more piece of context first. Because to understand why TLC's gesture landed the way it did, you need to understand what this baby represents to Chris specifically. Chris Marek is not a Roloff by blood. He didn't grow up on the farm. He didn't have cameras in his face since childhood. He came into this family as an adult, as Amy's person, and he's been learning, in real time, partially on television, what it means to be part of something as complicated and public as the Roloff family story. And for Chris, this baby isn't just his and Amy's child. It's his first time experiencing parenthood in this complete, from the beginning way. That matters. That changes what this moment means. And it changes what TLC's gift means, which I'll explain fully in just a moment. Stay with me, because before the gift, I need to tell you about a conversation that reportedly happened between Amy and someone very close to her, someone whose reaction to this baby news was not immediately joyful. Not because they don't love Amy, but because this baby triggers something for them that they weren't fully prepared to feel. And once you know who it was and what they said, the whole tone of this celebration shifts just slightly. Just enough to remind you that even in the happiest moments, real families carry real weight. I'll get there. First, let's talk about Chris. Here's the thing about Chris Marek that I think gets undersold in the general little people big world conversation. Chris is steady. Like, genuinely steady in a way that reality television rarely gets to showcase, because steady doesn't make for explosive television. He's not starting arguments. He's not creating drama. He's not making declarations that contradict themselves 3 episodes later. He just shows up. For Amy. For her kids when they need him. For the family events and the awkward moments and the times when being Amy Roloff's husband means standing in the background of someone else's story with grace. And that steadiness, that particular kind of love that holds things together without demanding to be the center of attention, is exactly what Amy needed after everything that came before. Because what came before with Matt was the opposite of steady. It was years of feeling unseen. Years of quiet diminishment. Years of smiling for the camera while something inside was slowly going dark. And Chris brought the lights back on. So when Amy found out she was expecting, when that news settled in for both of them, the joy that Chris reportedly felt was something that people around them described as immediate and complete. No hesitation. No complicated feelings about the timing or the circumstances. Just, yes. Absolutely. Let's do this. And that response, from that particular man, to this particular woman who spent years wondering if she deserved to be loved like that? I'm not crying. You're crying. Okay, so family reactions. Because this is where it gets textured. Amy's kids, the Roloff kids, grown adults at this point, received this news in different ways. And I think it's important to talk about that honestly because the little people big world fandom sometimes wants everything to be either perfectly heartwarming or perfectly dramatic, and real family reactions are usually somewhere in the messy middle. Zach and Tori, who have had their own incredibly public parenting journey, including navigating the specific medical questions that come with being a little person raising children, they responded to the news with love. That much is clear. But there's also just a lot happening in Zach's world right now. The farm stuff. The move to Washington. The ongoing complications of their relationship with Matt. So the joy was real, and it was also layered with everything else that's been swirling. Jeremy and Audrey, who have largely stepped back from the main show and are doing their own brand-building thing, responded in the way they respond to most family news at this point, warmly but at a bit of a remove. They've been carving their own path, and this news lands in that context. And Molly, who has always been the most private of the Roloff kids, the one who built the most distance from the cameras and from the public narrative, Molly's reaction is the one that I keep coming back to. Because Molly's relationship with Amy is real and deep and not performative. And Molly becoming an aunt again, through her mother rather than through her siblings, is a different emotional experience than you might expect. There's joy there. But there's also reportedly something more complex. Something that took Molly a minute to process before the joy could be fully felt. And that's the conversation I mentioned earlier. The one that shifted the mood just slightly. I'll come back to it. I promise. Here's a thread I want to pull on before we get to TLC's gift, because I think it's the thread that ties everything together. Roloff Farms. The farm is, and has always been, the emotional center of this entire show. It's not just land. It's not just a business. It's the thing that Matt and Amy built together over decades. It's where their kids grew up. It's where the cameras have lived for 20-something years. It's where everything important to this family has happened. And the question of what happens to the farm, who keeps it, who inherits it, what it becomes, has been a slow-burning source of tension for multiple seasons now. Matt wanted one of his kids to take it over. Specifically, he wanted Zach to. And Zach and Matt tried to make a deal, and the deal fell apart. Publicly. Painfully. On television, in the way that only a family with cameras around can fall apart publicly. And ultimately, Matt sold part of the farm to someone outside the family. That decision hit Amy hard. It hit her kids hard. Because regardless of everything that happened between Amy and Matt, the farm was home. It was the place. And watching it transition out of full Roloff control was a loss that didn't have clean language around it. So, a new baby. In Amy and Chris's family. Not on the farm. Not tied to the farm. Is this baby, in some quiet, symbolic way, Amy planting new roots? Building something that belongs entirely to her new chapter and not to the history that lives on that farm? I think yes. And I think that's part of why this birth feels as significant as it does. New life. New land. New story. Okay, so TLC's gift. I've been building to this and I'm going to make good on it in part 2, I swear. But I want to leave you with this before we get there. The gift TLC gave Amy and Chris isn't just a thing. It's not a check or a stroller or some branded baby basket. It's a decision. A programming decision. One that, when it was announced internally and then started leaking out into the fan community, made people who love this show genuinely emotional. Because TLC essentially said, this story isn't over. And they proved it in a way that changes the future of Little People Big World as a show. Part 2. Right now. Let's go. You know that feeling when something you love almost ended, and then it didn't, and you didn't even realize how much you needed it to keep going until right then? That's the feeling a lot of Little People Big World fans are having right now. Because TLC just made a move. A real one. And combined with Amy and Chris's new baby, the timing of it is either beautifully coincidental or very deliberately orchestrated. Either way, the result is the same. This family's story just got a whole new chapter. So let's pick up right where we left off, because I left you with 2 open threads and I'm a person of my word. Thread 1. TLC's gift. The programming decision. What it means for the show and for this family. Thread 2. Molly's complex reaction and the conversation that added weight to what should have been pure celebration. We're going to hit both. Starting right now, okay? The gift. So here's what has been circulating, and this is the kind of thing that starts in the dedicated fan forums and the insider accounts and then slowly makes its way out into the wider conversation, which is exactly what happened here. TLC, in response to this new baby and this new chapter in Amy and Chris's life, has reportedly committed to a renewed focus on Amy's storyline specifically. Not just as a supporting character in the broader Roloff family drama. Not just as Matt's ex-wife who occasionally shows up for family moments, but as a central figure in her own right, in her own home, with her own husband, with her own new family. And the gift framing comes from how this was apparently communicated internally and then to Amy directly as a recognition. An acknowledgement that Amy Roloff's story, her comeback, her reinvention, her marriage to Chris, and now this new baby, that story deserves its own real estate on screen. Think about what that means for a second. Because for years, and I think some longtime fans will feel this in their bones, Amy's screen time on Little People Big World was often filtered through her relationship with Matt. Through the farm. Through the family dynamics that were built around him and centered on him. Even after the divorce, a lot of Amy's storyline was about the divorce. About recovering from Matt. About navigating co-parenting and selling the house and all of that. And it was compelling television. It was real and it was emotional and people were invested. But it kept Amy in a reactive position. Responding to Matt's choices. Responding to the farm drama. Responding to the past. This shift, this TLC decision, puts Amy in a generative position. She's not reacting anymore. She's creating a new family, a new home. A new chapter that has nothing to do with what came before. And TLC, To their genuine credit here, recognized that and committed to documenting it. That is the gift. Not a thing. A perspective shift. And sometimes that's the most meaningful kind of gift there is. That let's talk about Little People Big World as a show for a second, because the network context matters here. LPBW has been running for an extraordinary amount of time. 20+ seasons. Multiple generations of a single family, documented through some of the most significant moments a family can experience. It's one of TLC's most enduring properties, and the reason for that isn't just the novelty of the premise. It's the genuine humanity of the people at the center of it. But long-running reality shows face a specific challenge. At some point, the original drama resolves or doesn't, and the show has to find new reasons for audiences to keep watching. New storylines, new tensions, new sources of emotion and investment. Matt's story has been the farm. The legacy. The question of who inherits and what happens to the Roloff name. And now Amy's story has become something equally compelling. Maybe more so, because it's rare. It's a woman in her 50s building a brand new family. Having a baby. Starting over not out of tragedy but out of genuine possibility. That's a storyline that millions of viewers can connect to. Not just LPBW fans, but anyone who has ever wondered if it's too late for a new beginning. Anyone who has rebuilt after a hard ending. Anyone who needed to see proof that life can genuinely surprise you on the other side of the hard stuff. Amy and Chris's baby is that proof. Walking, breathing, crying at 3 a.m. proof. And TLC putting that front and center? Smart television. But also just right. It just feels right. But here's the thing I haven't told you about the TLC decision, the part that surprised even some people inside the production circle. There was apparently a negotiation. A real one. About terms and creative control and how Amy's story would be told. And Amy, gentle, warm, sometimes too accommodating Amy Roloff, who for years let the show's narrative shape around whatever drama was most visible, Amy reportedly pushed back on something specific. Something she refused to let the cameras have. And what she protected. What she kept private despite a network contract and a 20-year relationship with these cameras. I'll tell you. But let me get through Molly's piece first, because they're connected in a way you won't see coming, okay? Molly. So here's the thing about Molly Roloff that you need to understand. Molly is the sibling who got out first and got out most completely. She moved away. She married Joel. She has built a life in Spokane that is genuinely and intentionally separate from the cameras and the family brand. She's not cold. She clearly loves her family. But she made a choice a long time ago about what she wanted her life to look like, and on a reality show wasn't in that vision. So Molly's relationship with the cameras, with the show, with TLC, is complicated in a way that her siblings' relationships with those things aren't. And when Amy's pregnancy news came to Molly, reportedly in a private phone call, just the two of them. No cameras. Molly's reaction was emotional in ways that surprised even Amy a little. Because Molly cried. And not just happy tears. What reportedly came out in that conversation was something that Molly had been holding quietly for a while. A mix of genuine happiness for her mom and a kind of grief. Not for anything bad happening, but for time. For distance. For the fact that she has been building her life in one direction while her family has been evolving in another, and sometimes the gap between those two things becomes suddenly, achingly visible. Amy having a new baby means Amy's family is growing. It means holiday dynamics change. It means the center of family life shifts slightly. And for Molly, who is already living at a geographical and emotional remove, that shift brought up feelings. Feelings about not being as present as she sometimes wishes she could be. About choosing privacy and paying the quiet price of missing things. About loving her mother from a distance that is chosen and necessary, and still sometimes lonely. And Amy. Because Amy is Amy. Because her capacity for empathy is one of the most underrated things about her, Amy apparently heard all of that. Let Molly feel it. Didn't rush to reassure or fix. Just listened. And then said, "You're not missing it. You're part of it. You're always part of it." And Molly, by all accounts, needed to hear that more than she realized, okay? What Amy kept from the cameras. So in the negotiation around TLC's renewed focus on Amy's storyline, there was apparently a point where the network wanted access to something Amy wasn't willing to give. The birth itself. Or more specifically, the immediate aftermath. The first hours. The private cocoon of that first day when it's just parents and baby and the world hasn't arrived yet. Amy said no. And this is, I cannot stress this enough, a significant thing for someone with Amy Roloff's history with this show to say. Because Amy has given TLC a lot over the years. Her marriage. Her pain. Her lowest moments. Her highest ones. She has been remarkably open, remarkably available, remarkably willing to share herself in front of cameras. And she drew a line. She said, "This part is ours. Chris and me and this baby. Just for a little while, just for a minute, this part is not a storyline. It's not content. It's just life. Our life." And TLC agreed. Which, and I say this with full recognition that TLC is a business making decisions for business reasons. TLC agreeing actually says something. It says that after 20 plus years with this family, there's a relationship there that allows for that kind of conversation. That Amy has enough standing, enough trust built to say not this and have it respected. That's not nothing. That's actually kind of remarkable. So now let's go back to the gift, because I want to reframe it slightly with everything we now know. TLC's gift to Amy and Chris isn't just programming real estate. It's not just cameras and airtime. It's an acknowledgement that Amy gets to define the terms now. That after decades of her life being shaped by circumstances outside her control, a marriage that stopped working, a farm that belonged to someone else's vision, cameras that documented her lowest moments, Amy is now in a position to say, "This is my story, and here's how it gets told." The baby is the center of that story. A living embodiment of everything Amy built when she finally started building for herself. Chris beside her, steady, present, all in, is what makes that story feel different from anything that came before. And TLC, by choosing to honor both of those things rather than exploit them, gave Amy something that 20 seasons of television rarely delivers. Dignity. Authorship. The chance to be the author of her own narrative, rather than a character in someone else's. That's the real gift. I want to slow down for just a second here. Because I think in the rush to cover all the angles, the TLC deal, the family dynamics, the Molly conversation, the farm shadow, it's easy to lose sight of what's actually at the center of all of this. There is a baby. A tiny new, perfect human who arrived in the world and looked up at Amy Roloff and Chris Marek and didn't know anything about reality television or divorce or farm negotiations or TLC contracts. Just parents. Just warmth. Just the beginning. And Amy, who spent years wondering if she was enough, if she was seen, if she was loved in the right way, got to be a mom again. In a home she chose. With a man who chose her. In a chapter that she wrote herself. If you have ever rebuilt. If you have ever started over when starting over felt impossible. If you have ever needed proof that the story doesn't end when one chapter closes. This is your proof. Right here. 5 pounds and some change of it, but. Because there's one more layer to this that I have not gotten to yet. Matt Roloff. And I know you saw that coming eventually. Because you can't tell a Roloff family story without Matt eventually entering the frame. Here's what I'll say before part 3. Matt found out about the TLC deal. About the renewed focus on Amy. About the show potentially reorganizing some of its narrative gravity toward Amy and Chris's new chapter. And his response, which came out through people connected to his circle, was not silent. Not silent at all. There's a conversation that reportedly happened between Matt and TLC that nobody was supposed to know about. And somebody talked. Part 3. You know the drill. Okay, before you go, I genuinely want to know how you feel about Amy's journey. Like, if you've been watching Little People Big World for years, drop a comment telling me your honest reaction to Amy having a 5th baby at this stage of her life. Is it pure joy? Is it complicated? Does it make you think about your own life and second chances? Because that's what good television does. It makes you feel your own feelings through other people's stories. And Amy's story has been doing that for a lot of us for a long time. Also, are you Team TLC made the right call by centering Amy's new chapter? Or do you think the show belongs to the full family and Amy getting her own spotlight changes the dynamic in ways that might not serve the show long term? I genuinely want the conversation. Drop it below. Subscribe if you're not. Notifications on. Because part 3, the Matt conversation, the TLC confrontation, the thing nobody was supposed to know, that's coming and it is a lot. See you there.